Here's a question that'll get you thinking. Are you living a life true to your values? Are you really living a life true to your values? As you're aware, we've been talking about the MBTI and temperament and the positive effects that knowing and understanding how to relate to and get along with different personality types can bring great joy and balance to all our relationships. These tools allow us to see other people's perspective and put us into someone else's shoes to understand their viewpoint and ideas. Using personality tools encourages and helps us identify our strengths and focus on the positive aspects of our personalities. When we do this, we're looking to create a focus of what's strong rather than what's wrong. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Personalities, Parenting and Partners. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. In this episode of Personalities, Parenting and Partners, we're going to talk about how we find our values and our strengths. Today we're talking to Steph Noon as she leads us through the field of positive psychology with a focus on Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson's VIA classification of character strengths and virtues. Hi Steph, welcome to the program today. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, thanks. It's really good to be here.
Now to start off, Steph, could you perhaps give our listeners an idea of your background, what you do and who you work with?
Yeah, sure. It's quite broad, actually. I find it hard to believe myself, but this is my 15th year of being a coach. So I call myself sort of a well-being coach or a life coach. So my primary focus is helping people with their mental and physical health just to feel good in life. And with that, there is no age or gender barrier because it really applies to everybody. So I work with children probably as young as about 9. I am my eldest client at the moment, 77, I think, and then everything in between. I work with mums and dads. I've got, again, example, currently one of my clients is a psychiatrist. One of my clients is a lawyer, doctor. Some of them are mums and dads, so really there is nothing that it's just anybody that would like to feel better in life.
So really it's just people. And I understand that because we all need this kind of work. I agree with you in all of that. So with your work, what's your background around that in terms of where did you start?
I've had a lifelong passion around psychology, the human brain. It's what fires me up. So my corporate background was actually in public relations and marketing, but I have always had this restless, keen desire to know more about the brain. So once I had children, then that, felt even more important. So I ended up, I was going to become a psychologist was what I thought. But when I looked into that, whilst it had many elements and it is great, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with psychology. For psychologists, for certain profiles of people is excellent. It didn't quite resonate with me entirely. I stumbled across life coaching because 15 years ago, it really wasn't very known. And that did connect. It was more about what do we do well and how can we build more of that, and a little less about what are all the things that are wrong, whilst there's a place for both. I resonated more with the let's build on what we do well. So, that led me into that space. And then I rounded out that original learning with then positive psychology emerged as a science, and that totally connected with me. That is very much specifically around the psychology of building on your strengths to help overcome the weaknesses.
Absolutely, which is a really great thing to think about and to do, because I say the same thing. If you concentrate on your weaknesses, you're often wasting a lot of energy focusing on something that you're not necessarily going to develop very well, and it's going to be quite stressful. Whereas if you concentrate on your strengths, then it enables you, makes you feel good and much more in your own place, so to speak.
It's one of the benefits of knowing what you do well as well is knowing that there's blind spots with that. So it's even your strengths overplayed can be unhelpful to either you or other people. So having a great deep understanding of what you innately do well and resonates with you, it helps you to know it on two levels. One, to use it to leverage up in the areas that are challenging for you, but two, to be aware where you may accidentally be overplaying that and it's having a negative effect.
Absolutely. I say that too when I'm working, is that your strengths can become your weaknesses. And like you say, you have to be aware of that. It's really important. So I look a lot at Myers-Briggs type indicators. So when you're talking about your framework of what you work in, which is a lot of Seligman's work. So when you talk about positive psychology and character strengths, what would you be talking about?
Yeah, Martin Seligman, considered, if you like, the founder or father of positive psychology. And whilst there's many, many aspects to positive psychology, one of the more foundational tools that he developed with another man called Chris Peterson was an area called character strengths. So they're basically, he looked at, there's a thing called the DSM manual, which is a very, very big, deep, long manual, which clearly describes all of the mental illnesses and ailments that we can have. But he recognized as a psychologist at the time that there wasn't a manual that said, are there any ubiquitous strengths to humanness, to humans, And so that led him and Chris to explore that. And they came up with, yes, there's 24 strengths of character that every single human has. And that is regardless of age or gender or culture or race. Being a human, we collectively share the same 24 strengths.
So in that, is this an easy thing to access for people? Because if there are all those strengths, is it possible for us to just go online and take a look at that? And if those strengths refer to everybody?
Yeah, there is. And that's one of the reasons why I think it would be pretty much without exception that every client I work with, I invite to complete the character strengths survey, because it's free, because it's so robustly scientifically supported. It's not just a little fun pop culture, survey that you fill out. And I know it's going to apply to every single person. The beauty, so yes, there's an online survey. You can access that at www.viacharacter.org. So it's V for victory, I for indigo, A for apple, viacharacter.org. What it will do is you just fill out you answer their questions. I always encourage people to try and just not overthink the answer. Go with what comes up first for you. Your gut feeling is going to be the truth of the answer. And at the end of it, then it will rank in order the preference with which you use those 24 strengths. So 1 through to 24. And the richness of that information is, although you have all 24 and I have all 24, we have a different preference and very individual preference with which we use our strengths. So when you know then very clearly, say what your top 5 strengths are, those ones are going to be the ones that are innate to you, that inform how you think, how you speak, how you behave. They are who you are. And that gives you an opportunity then to intentionally leverage them again when you're in a struggle, or, as I said earlier, notice where you might be overplaying them and dial it back a little bit.
Absolutely. So how do you use these with your clients when you're working with them?
I find this just really, not only does it resonate with me, it resonates with the clients, because it gives us a basis to have the conversation around they're all strengths. So our brain, just as a little digression here, but our brains are wired to be alert for what's wrong. We have a negativity bias. That was really important for the origins of our species and as a survival mechanism. But we carry that predisposition today. And therefore, we have a likelihood to want to focus on the what's wrong, how I stuffed up, where I'm not very good. And that then speaks to the part of the brain that's our most primal part, is called the amygdala. The amygdala is our fight and flight response. So when I'm telling the amygdala, I'm not feeling good about myself, life isn't very good, it responds in a chemical way that helps me survive. So that could be, it gives me more adrenaline, more cortisol, and that further narrows my focus into saying, heck, there is something wrong, focus on what's wrong. And we get in this downward kind of spiral. So one of the psychological benefits of focusing on your innate and natural strengths is we're not accidentally activating the amygdala and that negative focus. And so we broaden and open up our ability to think and see and therefore change and develop. So that's one of the underpinning psychological benefits of character strengths. That was a long-winded answer. Your question was around how does that help clients? So it helps their brains remain open to being able to optimize change through a positive lens.
A great digression, Steph. Most people wouldn't know that. I have no idea around that kind of concept. And like you say, in today's world right now, where people are constantly less resilient to what's happening in the world, they have far more happening than has ever happened social media-wise, just interaction with people, non-interaction with people with COVID, that yet a downward spiral is happening for a lot of people. So understanding how your brain works, that was fantastic. So giving yourself positive values is a really wonderful, wonderful way to go. So how would you use this if you're talking to companies or business owners rather than, we've spoken about individual people. How does it's important in a workplace?
It's really important, and I'm glad you asked that question. I do a lot of work with organizations around their team strengths because we can very genuinely and authentically and easily affirm someone else's strengths, especially if we know what they are. So if I'm working with a team and I'll get everyone to do the team profile, the character strengths profile, and then if I know, let's say, for example, Kate, I'll make this up, but let's say you had creativity as a top strength. And if I had, which I don't, but prudence is one of the top strengths, right? So prudence is a sense of cautiousness. So there's a couple of things going on here. Firstly, when I need to be creative as a prudent person, I'm less likely to be able to allow my brain to just woohoo, go mad, because that's not what my brain wants to do. And you're more likely to be thinking, why is Steph always so focused on the detail? You would be getting excited in a meeting, let's say. You'd be saying, oh, and we could do this, and I could see how we could do this. And I would be in the same meeting going, oh, but Kate, did you think about how come this, what if this goes wrong? And so two things. One is I'm probably going to be irritating you and you're probably going to be irritating me. And yet we both have significant value to offer. But through the strengths lens, it gives me the opportunity in my head to go, there's Kate and her creativity. Gotta love that because I don't have it. And you'd be thinking, wow, I can hear Steph's prudence right now. She's really scared of the detail. But we can have a strength-based conversation around that because I'm not criticizing you. I'm saying, Kate, I can hear your creative strengths on fire right now. However, in this moment, because we're creating an emergency exit plan for this event, you're going to have to bear with me on the detail right here. Is that okay? And then I want to leverage back into your amazing strengths. So we can have this generous, authentic, strength-based conversation to say, you're not hearing me, I'm not hearing you, but I see your strength and you see mine. So that can work well there. Plus, let's say I'm working on my own and I need creativity and I know it's not strong for me and I know it's strong for you. I can come to you as my peer and say, Kate, I'm needing to be really lateral and creative in my approach here, and I know this is your thing. Can you help me out? So what happens in that case is you feel $1 million because I've just invited you to be in your top strength. And when we're in our top strengths, we feel energized, engaged, authentic. It feels great. So you I bloody love it when Steph comes and asks me to be in my strengths, and I get the benefit of your strength. So it's a win-win when we know as our teams, our peers' strengths.
Absolutely. And when you can do that and put yourself in someone else's shoes too, literally in the sense of, I get that and I understand exactly what you're saying because a lot of the time I am actually more prudent as a person, to tell the truth. And I know who are the creative, big picture people that we work with and that I know as friends. And they are the people that if I want a change of idea or I want to think of something really lateral and interesting and creative, they're the people I go to because I know that that is their gift. It's not mine. Mine is being sensible and perhaps pulling those people into line when they're a little bit, like you say, woohoo, let's run with this, because designing a fire exit might not really be much fun. So it is that thought of understanding where other people are coming from. And it does create that fun element, that understanding element for everybody. And also, I get you, teams work much better because most people, as I always say in my podcast, think that the way that they think is the way everyone else is thinking. And until they realize, like my whole process of doing this work is to make people realize that actually no one thinks like you. And once you get the idea and the handle that with your values and the framework that I use of Myers-Briggs type indicator and temperaments, the more knowledge people have and put all of these packages together, the more they're going to understand other people.
Oh.
And let's face it, as we say, where are the other people? They're at a breakfast table, they're at the shops, they're everywhere.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And I talk about it often is it builds our level of tolerance with others. So instead of feeling annoyed that you don't not following me or are being what I'm feeling is obstructive, instead it gives me this level of understanding. And if I can just weave that into, so we talked work context, but you can imagine, Kate, it plays out probably even more importantly in a home context. So
absolutely,
all four of my kids have had to tolerate living with a life coach and doing these surveys, and my husband. But one of the greatest values for that is, so I'll give you an example. My husband's, actually, we're fortunate. We share the same top strength, which is gratitude. So the two of us have gratitude parties all the time together. It's so much fun. But his second strength is fairness. Now, it's interesting because if he's restless at night and he's tossing and turning and keeping me awake and I'm feeling frustrated at him, I'll say, what's getting in the way if you're going to sleep? And it'll nearly always be something at work that wasn't fair.
Right.
It'll be, but this wasn't right. This should have turned out a different way. So it's an opportunity for me, rather than just say, well, it's the middle of the night, go to sleep, you're frustrating me.
Yes.
I can say, okay, I can hear your strength of fairness playing out right now. And what would happen if right now you were able just to dial that back a little bit to allow you to go to sleep, and maybe we could pick it up in the morning and talk it through, or we could talk it through now, but I can have greater tolerance and understanding for him about what's going on, and I can give him an opportunity to perhaps manage that, where it's become an overplay for him, it's become restless.
What a wonderful woman, Steph. Can you come and sleep with my husband? Because I just tell him to get out of bed. I just say, you're out, I'm not putting up with this. So there we go for all of those women out there. Steph's idea of tapping in is far nicer than my idea of tapping in. So that's a wonderful thing to do, and I will give it a whirl, Steph. I'm going to do our values. I'm going to find out what keeps him awake at night. So that's a fabulous idea, though. So how else do you use it in your family? I mean, your kids have grown up like my kids, with constant think about other people and look at it from their point of view and blah, blah, blah. And I actually find it has been great for my children, as I've no doubt with yours, when they're handling other people and interacting with other people. It gives them far greater insight into people knowing this stuff and knowing what you're knowing. So how does it help you guys in your family life as well?
It absolutely has. And sometimes it's overt and obvious, and sometimes it's this subtle drip feed of information that they may not even realize they've been infected with.
Yes.
I think about, it's a funny one. It was actually a few years ago now, but we were actually at my dad's memorial service, funeral, and my son, one of my son's number one character strength is humor and playfulness. So he's just up for fun, delightful. Unless you're at a funeral, maybe not.
Yeah, it's probably not a good time.
So I do recall that he was, and it was probably at that time his coping mechanism too. He's throwing around a few one-liners while it was more of the serious, solemn parts of the service. But it was one of his sisters that said, maybe you could dial back that strength of humour right now. So they were able to call each other out on it, noticing what was going on instead of just being embarrassed or angry. And it gave a real-time, easy way to accept the feedback and make some change, because it was a strength, but it was just dial it back a little bit right now.
Absolutely. And sometimes, like you say, your strengths are your weaknesses, because using that humour was helping him overcome what he might have been feeling. And so it's just that having a reminder that perhaps it's not the time or the place to do that is a fabulous thing, especially from a sibling. All good too. You know, that's fabulous. That is really, really good. So in terms of, have you found that it's helped them in any way with careers at all?
It helps everybody with careers. We've definitely, I'm sort of smiling because I can see my kids' eyes rolling at the question, because yes, we have very specific career conversations around strengths, because the research would say when we find a career that has us functioning out of most of our top 5 strengths, that's a calling. That's when we feel utterly in our space. So me as a wellbeing coach, for example, my top 5 strengths are gratitude, love, zest, hope, and social intelligence. And so they are strengths that are primarily used every day in a coaching situation. Mm-hmm. I do need a lot of love and openness and willingness for the people that are with me, regardless, no judgment. It requires a lot of energy, so that zest piece is good internally, but it absolutely requires a genuine, authentic sense of hope in me, in that I feel toward the person in front of me, and a sense of that social intelligence that I can kind of have a read on what's going on here. Despite what you're saying, I'm seeing something different behind it. So that's just an example that because I am innately called into my strengths every day, I bounce out of bed every morning genuinely, just like I pinch myself. That's my gratitude too, that I'm so grateful that I get to do this work. So because it calls upon my strengths. So that's the conversations when my children are now all adults, like from 19 to 29. So they've gone through looking for the careers. So one of the first things we'll do is we'll look at their top 5 strengths and we'll say, usually I do it by exclusion first of all. So what doesn't align? So if your strengths, so the strengths of mine, for example, they're strengths of others, they're strengths of connection with others. So what wouldn't align for me is maybe being a computer analyst sitting on my own. They're not leveraging any of my strengths. So I often start with exclusion to say what just absolutely wouldn't be an area to look in. That's pretty easy. And then so what are careers, let's start very broadly, that match or would call upon some of your top strengths? And then we just keep refining it down, narrowing it down, because on top of your strengths, you've got your learnt skills and talents as well. So they're slightly different to strengths. They're things that you've studied or learnt. So where you can meld in your skills, your strengths, your talents, and then what job or role or career would require those. And if you can find that, you're working you're not working, you're in your calling every day.
You are. And my husband's thing is, if you work a job you love, you never work a day in your life. And that's the truth of it. If you're bouncing out of bed, that's wonderful, and what wonderful information. So for anybody out there that does have children that's listening today, what a fabulous way to start looking with your children, because I know that with mine too, it is all about looking at what plays to those strengths and what things that you love. And I'm really fortunate because my daughter's fallen into what she loves and she bounces out of bed, and my son's still yet to find that. But that's good too, because we managed to look at all of those other things, and I will take on what we're talking about today, Steph, and I'll let you know what all the values are of my family, because this is something that I have not looked into yet, and I think it is so valuable. It's amazing work that you're doing, and I think there's so much more to talk about in that area. That's just fascinating. So look, what is the best way, if listeners are listening today, that they can get in touch with you? Is it via email? Do you have, if they got in touch with you that way, would you be able to run sessions via Zoom if you were talking? What's the best way?
Sure. Probably the website, which is livelifecoaching.com.au, has a contact form on there, or my email address is steph@livelifecoaching.com.au. And yeah, totally at the moment, a lot of work, if it's a workplace one, a lot are doing it via Zoom, which we can do. I still attend workshop, face-to-face functions. A lot of people are choosing to do them more outdoors for understandable reasons, or one-on-one coaching. At the moment, because of the COVID environment, I'm doing my coaching via Zoom, but hopefully one day we'll get back to face-to-face.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, beautiful, because we'll list those at the bottom of the podcast today so that people can contact you, Steph. Hey, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your amazing insights and all of the things that you know about yourself and other people. I think this is going to be life-changing for a lot of people out there. So everybody, get out and check your values, because they are really, really important. Thanks, Steph.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity, Kate. It's been a delight.
Well, that was fun. You may have figured out Steph's MBTI personality type is an ESFP. ESFPs are practical, optimistic, fun-loving people. They enjoy people and socialising and do not shun the spotlight. They're interested in simply living in the present and doing what feels right at that moment. They're also very understanding and perceptive when it comes to other people. They can sense what other people are feeling and know how to respond. People find them warm, sympathetic and easygoing. This makes Steph's role as a coach and a presenter a perfect fit for her type. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening. We appreciate your time and would love it if you liked and shared this episode of Personalities, Parenting and Partners. Until next time.